Hey, it's so good to be with all of you. Thank you. You're very, very kind. I'm grateful to be with you today. I'm always humbled by this experience to be able to tell you this story about hope and healing and health and restoration. It's not about the business. My drive is about seeing that this never, ever occurs again. And it occurs every day. And I'll go through this story. My name is Tony Stephan. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm just a regular Joe. And tragically, back in 1994, I lost the best part of my life, my sweetheart, to a suicide. Her diagnosis was bipolar affective disorder 1 with rapid cycling. The most significant diagnosis that you can have in the affective disorders. And she struggled daily with this. What made it worse was when she finally succumbed and decided to go on the medication. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a caveat here. I'm not anti-medication. There are times when we actually recommend people that they need to get onto a recommended medication for a starter. That case is somewhat rare, but it's still there. But there are times when these things are appropriate. But in this case, it wasn't, because this medication is black box warned by your government and our government because it creates suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. And I'm here to tell you that the experiences that we have in our nation and your nation with schoolyard shootings are all about this and nothing more or less. And the evidence is so clear and so defined on the table. She struggled for years and years. At the time of her death, this is an older picture as well, this young man was diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder 1 with rapid cycling. This young lady in the background diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder 1 with rapid cycling with schizoaffective disorder. A number of years later, this young man here would be diagnosed as a manic depressive with mania. This young lady in the background had autistic-like features. This young lady here would become schizophrenic at the age of 11, seeing people that weren't there. Major mood lability all over the map, literally. This young lady here would suffer with severe depression. Wow. My family was in trouble. And I was absolutely losing my family. It was coming unloosed before my own eyes. And I stood as a helpless father watching this go on. I had to bury my wife's father some 16 years before she took her life. He took his as well. So in this case, it's a very familial issue. It's through the family. It's a genetic issue in a major way. Profound. This is my daughter Autumn and Joseph. Joseph was extremely violent. Extremely violent. I'm going to have Discovery Health Channel tell you about his existence. They did a 1-hour documentary on the Stephan family. So he's going to talk to us about what it did to him.
You are watching Discovery Health Channel.
You know, I was quite certain that I could kill almost anyone. I could do these things without even thinking twice about it.
A family's legacy. Bipolar disorder, a debilitating mental illness. By January of 1996, Tony Stephan was at his wit's end. His wife had committed suicide after a decade-long battle with bipolar disorder. Then his daughter and son were diagnosed with the same disease. 15-year-old Joe was tormented, too, by suicidal thoughts.
I was always quite certain that I would never make it through, to next summer or to the beginning of school again, stuff like that. I was always expected You know, I kind of expected myself to be dead by then.
And Joseph was dangerous. He was obsessed with knives.
I was very paranoid of being attacked by, you know, like government kind of things, you know, SWAT teams and stuff. So I would stockpile just about any kind of weapon I could get my hands on. You know, knives, even rifles. Just about anything that I could maim or destroy. I would have piled away somewhere.
When I saw him in early April of 1995, there were a lot of concerns about Joe and his family. His family was actually quite terrified of him, and he was delusional at times. Joe had verbally threatened to kill his siblings and his stepmother several times. I felt at this time that he was definitely bipolar. I prescribed lithium in April of 1995. There was some concern about his compliance with medication of lithium.
That was just a horrendous feeling. I hated that. Whenever I would take that, I would get the shakes and just feel so crappy. Like it made me feel not all there, like physically. I just didn't feel good at all. I would just get all dark and dingy. You know, I was quite certain that I could kill almost anyone or anything. You know, it even scared myself that I could do these things without even thinking twice about it.
This is exactly what we were living with. It was a terrifying situation for everybody involved. Everybody became ill, not just Joseph, not just Autumn, but every one of us were adversely affected by this terrible, terrible disorder, this incurable, dungeon-like disorder that ties people up for their lives. It's a lifelong sentence. That's the scary part of this thing. And here I am as a father, and I'm wondering, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this thing through? I remarried after Debbie's death about 8 months later to a wonderful lady. And that's Barbara. And she's just a real sweetheart. She carried us through this mess. It was bad. She moved in with us, and I warned her. I said, Barb, this isn't going to be easy. It's like living in an asylum. And when I say that, please understand. Let me give you another caveat. These people don't line up to sign up for these issues. It's not of their own creation. It can happen to any one of us. It doesn't matter if we're rich or poor, black or white, or whatever our religious belief is. These things come upon people, and they affect people of all races. Whatever our thinking is, it has nothing to do with that. It's the disorder. And this young boy suffered so bad. Broke our hearts. Well, he was on lithium, as it showed in the Discovery Health channel. And he didn't like the feeling, and so he would jump off of it. And while lithium didn't fix the situation, it did have a sedating effect to a certain extent. But he would never be functional. And when he would dive off of this, he would lose it even more than what he was already. And 4 or 5 of us would literally have to take this boy down, fighting and screaming, and pack him up with lithium and pour water in. You want to talk about a dysfunctional family? That was us. That was the Stephan family. Welcome, welcome to Cardston, Alberta. Cardston's newest dysfunctional family. And that's what we were living with. He ended up getting a federal weapons charge, as it showed that he had this unique desire to stockpile and do all these things. Extremely paranoid, extremely violent. When you woke him up in the morning, boy howdy, you had to go at it real careful. Or you had 250 pounds of fury in your face. And by afternoon, this young guy was on a high, just like a drug high, created from the high of the bipolar. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Barbara said, Tony, you know what? These doctors have been wonderful here. They're trying to help. You saw this good Dr. Lowe. Wonderful man. But Tony, we've got to do something different. We're not going to make it. We're not going to survive this. So I'm going to get an appointment with with somebody that knows really what they're doing. So she got an appointment at the University of Calgary Foothills Hospital, the psychiatric extension. Took about 3 months to get the appointment. On the appointed day, we drove up there. It's about a 3-hour drive. So there's Joseph and there's Barbara and myself. We got there, finally got in, and I started to tell her what we're going through. This wonderful psychiatrist. And she said, Mr. Stephan, please, spare me the details. I work with thousands and thousands of individuals that struggle every day like this, so you're wasting your time. I don't need to hear that. Let's see what we can do. And I said to her, I said, you know, with all of the millions and millions of dollars in the pharmaceutical research side of the industry, with all of these thousands of university laboratories and tens of thousands of researchers worldwide, there's got to be a better answer, because this isn't working. My daughter is losing it. She's on 5 medications, Haldol, Rivotril, Epival, Ativan, and Cogentin. One of those is enough to knock a horse down, let alone taking 5. And being absolutely suicidal, absolutely out of control. And this young man taking 900 milligrams of Carbolith, having all of the negative side effects, wasn't getting anything out of it either in that sense. And I'm telling her that he'll never be able to hold his own baby. He'll never be married. He will never have an educational pursuit or career. Because that's what this disorder does. Because it's a mental illness. I hate those terms. Those are dungeon terms. In fact, we don't even use those. I don't like that. Because it's an all-day, everyday sentence. You're better off to go to jail for 10 years than to have that disorder in that sense. No kidding. And I'm explaining this to her, and she's saying, yes, Mr. Stephan, I understand. We've got the very best in science, the very best in medications that are available. I'm sorry. And I guess I pushed the envelope a little too hard. And she said, Mrs. Stephan, would you please take Joseph and go out in the waiting room and close the door? I need to talk to your husband. When that door closed, it was like a shotgun going off in my face. You need a wake-up call, Mr. Stephan. What you see is what you've got. There's no escaping it. And Mr. Stephan, I need to show you something. She had this large manual. It said DSM-4. I didn't know what that was. I do now. The Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Volume 4. It's used to delineate. It's used for all of the psychiatric diagnoses. And she opened it up to the affective disorder section. She says, look what it says here. It says, Mr. Stephan, that this disorder becomes more chronic with age. That means as he gets older, it's going to get worse. Look what it says here. It says that it's a recurrent disorder. That means, Mr. Stephan, that it doesn't go away. It doesn't go into remission. And it's incurable. And Mr. Stephan, you need to understand that there's a very high possibility that he's going to suicide. Just like his mother and his grandfather. Because you've got a predisposition to it in your home, in your family. Wow. I'll tell you, if hope was ever shattered, it was that day. Because there wasn't a glimmer of light in my soul at all that somehow we were going to find an answer for this. That somehow he would be okay. That somehow this nightmare, this jail sentence that he received would go away. I think that on that long journey home, I was a lot more depressed than what he was. It was terrifying. I'm losing it as a father. And I'm losing the most precious part of my life, my family. Some people have told me, she was the enemy. Clearly, she had to be the villain. There isn't a villain in this story. And she was my best friend. Because she kicked me so hard in the guts and winded me so bad and sent me reeling down the highway. And she did. She said, Mr. Stephan, you need a wake-up call. And she gave it to me clearly. Because when I walked out of that office, I realized it's not here. There is no answer here other than death and carnage and destruction and the waning away of lives. When I got home, I had a change of heart. I got angry. There was like a fire burning in my gut. I couldn't believe that these children were sent here, that this wonderful wife, that my father-in-law, who I used to fish with, that I love with all my heart, was sent here to suffer and to die like that. Broken lives left in the wake. I couldn't believe it. You know, there's an old saying out there that there are no atheists in the foxholes. And while I wasn't an atheist, I was in the foxhole of life. And it didn't matter what I threw at this. It wasn't going to go away. So I was left unto my own devices. I took it to prayer. Because there wasn't anything else. That's pretty bad. I should have realized that from the front end. And I started to pray and I started to plead. And you know, when I would pray, I'd say, Lord, how come? I don't understand this. I don't believe that these people were sent here. I always had this feeling that would come over me that, no, this isn't it. This isn't part of this life experience. It's not meant to be. It's not meant to be. And I moved on from that point, believing that there was going to be something that would come down the road that would help me. You know, it was funny. Little pieces of the puzzle started to come into my life. People started bringing those pieces. And I started to assemble this. I'm walking down, I was a property manager for my living, and I'm walking down one of the main hallways in a building. And the fellow that I was working with was the owner's liaison. And he started to speak to me. He said, you know, Tony, I don't know a whole lot about mental disorders. Never ever experienced it to this point. My wife is okay, my kids are okay. And so I don't understand that. But he said, I spent 20 years formulating feed for livestock. And I'm thinking, where's this going? Okay, carry on. And he said something. He said, I looked after hundreds of thousands of hogs throughout North America, the western part of the northwest part of the U.S., and especially into Alberta and BC, with the Hutterite colonies. And he said, I used to see this syndrome that's called ear and tail biting syndrome, where these animals literally attack one another. They become hyper irritable. And when he told me that, it took me home. I'm thinking of my son and what he was going through. And they savagely attack one another. They tear off an ear, tear off a tail. That's why they call it ear and tail biting syndrome. And they would gore one another. And if you didn't pen them away, you had a fatality. And he said, but we learned very quickly into this game that you could nutrate away the disorder. That you could nutrate away this disorder. Like nutrition? And it was then that I had an epiphany. I'd never experienced that before. You know, it's like a light that rests upon your head and travels right through you. And you absolutely know it's confirmed to you that you've heard truth. This is it. You've arrived. You've just pulled up to the station. And I absolutely knew that that was an answer. You could nutrate away the disorder. So armed with my desire to see my family restored and with the information that this other gentleman had, we set out. And we started to put my son on different nutrient protocols that we had brought forth. They weren't pig pills, by the way. That's what the National Post, that's like USA Today, wrote in the national rag across Canada. Mr. Stefan put his son on pig pills. I didn't know that pigs eat capsules. Anyhow, I guess it's really interesting. Well, you know, it was kind of a struggle still, because we started him off in November of 1995, almost 2 years. We continued on, almost 2 years after the death of my wife. And I would say he probably got about 15% better on that. You know, years later, we were charged criminally for what we had done. We actually ended up in court. And I remember sitting in the, standing in the witness box. And it's my turn to be cross-examined by the Crown. That's like the Attorney General's Department. Mr. Stephan, are you a psychiatrist? No, I'm not, sir. Are you a psychologist of any kind? No. Do you have any medical training? Well, I took a first aid certificate once. Mr. Stephan, I want you to explain to the Honorable Court how you determined in your affidavit at trial, I have it right here in my hand, sir, you stated that you feel that your son got 15% better. Explain that to the Honorable Court, how you could actually make that evaluation without being a psychiatrist. And I looked up at the judge and I said, Your Honor, the way that I knew that he was about 15% better is he stopped threatening to kill us all at night by burning the house down with us in it. And the judge accepted that. Well, you know, an interesting thing occurred, because January 18th, following that November, we placed my son on another cocktail of nutrients. And it was quite an interesting experience. 3 days into the nutrients, he actually ran out of his prescription, his lithium prescription. And my wife and I had a family discussion over whether or not she should refill that prescription. She calls it a fight. And for the gentleman here, guess who won? She went down and got the prescription. And you know, she came home and walked into the house, and she was clearly upset. She said, Tony, I'm so afraid. I don't know what to do. This is so scary. And you know what he's like when he's off of that lithium? Yeah, it's not good when he's on, but you know, it's even worse. And I said, I know, dear. And she said, but I'm just going to trust. Here, you take the bottle. You do what you feel like you have to. I'm just so afraid. And you know, I took that bottle, this one right here, and I walked upstairs, and I opened the medicine cabinet, and I set it on the second shelf, and I closed that door. And I want you to know that I never, ever had to take it down off that shelf again. It never was used. It's still full. Because within 30 days, this boy no longer exhibited any symptoms of bipolar disorder. This young man was sane. I remember sitting on the couch with him about 6 weeks into it, and him saying to me, Dad, where was I? What happened to me? Why was I so angry? I don't understand. I said, son, don't worry. That wasn't you. That was your chemistry. And he's whole. My daughter Autumn went through the same experience. She had to be looked after. She was dropped off at our house. Went through the same process. She resisted it. I won't say that I forced her to do it. It doesn't sound politically correct. But I did constrain her. And she got better believing that it wouldn't affect her. I've had doctors say, must have been a placebo effect. Well, sir, man, how can it be a placebo effect if she fought it and said it wouldn't work? You see? Interesting. Interesting. It's okay. It's all right. Well, you know, we kept on going. I absolutely realized that this wasn't going to be an easy journey. This isn't like finding an answer to hangnails, right? I went out in the community. We started working with people. Worked with a lady that was tied up in her room basically for 18 years. severe symptoms of schizophrenia. Only reason to come out was to go to the doctor about once every 2 months, to rise for meals and restroom breaks and go back to the bed. That was her existence for 18 years. We put her on this protocol and it changed her life. She got a part-time job working down at the hospital in the cafeteria. People had never seen her. Who are you? Well, my name's Gloria. Well, where do you live? Oh, I've lived here for 20 years. I'm up the street. I've never seen you before, Gloria. Nice to meet you. Wow. We saw all these lives changing as we passed this stuff out. And so we decided, let's take it up to the university. And it was an interesting experience because when we took it to the university, we started working with a lady named Bonnie J. Kaplan. She has a PhD in psychology and she's a clinical trialist and is well published. When she first looked at this, she said, this is snake oil. You guys are selling snake oil. And I said, we're not even selling it. We're going to give it to you. Just try it. And she was very, very resistant. But she started working with a good friend of hers, Dr. Stephen Simpson, who's a psychiatrist and a PhD biochemist. Very, very interesting experience because they thought, well, let's just do this. Probably won't come to anything, but Stephen, why don't you take the next new patients that you have, let's say 10, take 10. When they come through the door, just put them on this stuff and let's just see what happens. So they decided that they were going to do this. Well, they saw amazing things happening. And so what they did is the Canadian Psychiatric Association heard about what they're doing and said, why don't you make a presentation at the annual general conference? And CTV National News, that's like your CNN down here or ABC News or whatever, same kind of thing, happened to be there. And of course, they wanted to make a story out of it. Let's see what happened.
Tonight on CTV News, can a nutritional supplement help people suffering with a troubling mental disorder? CTV's Avis Favreau has an exclusive report you won't want to miss. Watch CTV News tonight at 11.
It all started as one man's desperate attempt to save his family from mental illness, but he may have discovered a whole new way to treat bipolar disorder. In medical news tonight, there is new reason for optimism for sufferers of bipolar disorder, a condition that causes manic depression and a condition that affects hundreds of thousands of Canadians. According to findings of a small study presented today to the Canadian Psychiatric Association, a combination of vitamins and minerals may alleviate the disorder's debilitating symptoms. CTV's medical specialist Avis Favreau reports.
Bipolar illness ran through Tony Steffen's family. His wife Debbie committed suicide. His son and daughter were also ill and on drugs that didn't work.
She had already been taking medication for over 4.5 years, and she was going to suicide. It wasn't helping. My son was on 900 milligrams of lithium per day and was absolutely out of control.
Then he learned of minerals and vitamins given to pigs with a nervous disorder. In desperation, he gave a variation of the supplements to his son.
Within 30 days, he no longer experienced any of the symptoms of bipolar affective disorder.
Both his children, he says, are still on the supplements and are well some 4 years later. Now, doctors at the University of Calgary say they have intriguing early results from a group of 10 bipolar patients on the same supplements. Most had less depression, fewer manic episodes, and improved mental well-being.
The decrease in their symptoms is of a magnitude that is very impressive. Any medication that ever had this effect would catch a lot of people's attention.
And most have cut their standard drug use by 2/3.
This is an entirely different approach to the standard medical therapies that we use now.
But Steve Morton, who was part of the Calgary study, said the nutrients helped put his life in order after the bipolar illness left him suicidal and in hospital.
This has brought me to recognize a new me, and has allowed me to become, a new person.
In fact, the Alberta government is investing more than $500,000 to fund more rigorous studies of these supplements.
When I saw that, I just about fell out of the chair. We've arrived at the station. No, we haven't. The next morning, the phone rang. Good morning. Is that Mr. Stephan? Yes, it is. How can I help you? This is so-and-so from Health Canada, the regulator. Oh, okay. How can I help you? Mr. Stephan, we saw you speaking last night on CTV National News. Is that correct? Yeah, it is. Who gave you the authority to speak publicly in this matter? Do I need to have authority? Yes, you're in breach of Section 3.1 and 3.2 of the Food and Drugs Act. You're disallowed from talking further. Do you understand? You will not speak publicly about this anymore. You will not do any research. You will not sell any product. You're going to make this thing go away. And if you don't, then we will have to extend criminal charges your direction. And I said, just a minute. I just have to look out my window to see if my house has moved to Bolivia, where people disappear at night, never to be heard from again. I'm in Canada, where under Section 2 of our charter, we have the right to freedom of speech. Mr. Stephan, you've heard the word. Thank you. Click. Interesting. And the persecution began from that time forward. You wouldn't have thought that they would have sent a cease and desist order, but they did. Or that they would send a second one, or that they would send a third one. But they did. But back home at the ranch, my family was saved. Absolutely. I want you to hear from Autumn, who's going to tell us about what it did for her in the Discovery Health Channel.
Hey, do you want to come over and look at the album?
Sure.
They told me when I was on the Haldol and a number of other medications, you know, maybe we'd want to consider having an operation so there wouldn't be any more risk of pregnancy, because the effects on a fetus would just be horrendous.
He was a champ, wasn't he? Oh yeah.
I'm just so glad I didn't take that advice. I've got 2 little girls now. It's kind of like starting over and getting a real life. It's been good.
She went on to write a bestseller in Canada called A Promise of Hope. It's published by HarperCollins, and now that's working. What are we doing? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Good for you. I need a shake-up. This is it. Oh, what a wonderful spiritual experience as you read this book. It's a story of hope. I'd recommend you get a copy. But I'm going to warn you, don't do it late at night, because you will read all night long. I'm serious. But this became a bestseller, and now they're getting the rights moved into the U.S. for publishing. And she's been well for 17 years. Not 4 like that news broadcast. And here's Joseph.
I was quite excited by the idea of something new. You know, maybe something would make me feel better. And I was willing to take a chance with that.
On January 18th, 1996, Joseph took his first daily dose. Even after 5 days on the supplement, Joe felt better.
Once that stuff started to kick in, it's just like a fog lifted, you know, and I could see what was right and wrong and how I should be acting.
And Joe has graduated from high school and works as a forklift operator.
I can do whatever I want now. You know, I know that I can function when I have to. I don't have to worry about having a relapse or anything, you know. Things are looking up quite a bit.
Wow. And you know, the Globe and Mail, that's one of Canada's largest newspapers, started to get it right. It wasn't pig pills. Now it's re-engineered pig feed. What a wonderful young man. What a blessing. What an answer to prayer. You see, it's only and ever has been about restoration. And this isn't just for the Stephan family. This is for everybody to find. And there are tens and tens and tens of thousands of people who have experienced the same thing. That wonderful thing, that gift. You know, it was kind of funny. Joe, living in our basement, one day he came up and he said, "Dad, can I borrow your credit card?" I said, "What are you going to do with it?" "Well, I need to find a wife." I said, "Oh, you're going to use my credit card to go find a wife, are you? How does that work? Explain that to me." "Well, you know, there's this mingle thing out there, I said, what's that? He said, well, it's like a chat, and you find a wife on this thing. Oh, okay, you're going to do this. You're going to find a wife on this? Yeah, and I think it's about $25 a month. Can I use your card? Yeah. Go ahead. Wow, okay. And about a week later, he comes out of the basement. He's been down there just living night and day on this computer with my $25. And he comes up and he says, Dad, I found her. I said, you found her? I found my wife. I said, all this in 1 week? Wow, this is pretty good. He said, yeah, so now I need to borrow your truck. Because I'm driving north and I'm going to stay with her parents and her over the weekend. Can I borrow your truck, Dad? Sure. Here you go, son. Be careful. So he brings this young lady home. Hey, Dad, she's a great girl, and I want to marry her. But she's bipolar. Do you think we can fix her? Dang straight we can. And we did. And I remember that wasn't very much longer after that, was it, Barb? Bang, 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 bang on the door, 7 o'clock in the morning. Hello? We're both still in bed. Saturday, come on. Hey, Dad? Yeah? Can I come in? Yeah, you can come in. Dad, do you think it's a good day to get married? And I said, yeah, I think it's a great day. Well, they got 4 little children now. Wow. And he works, and he plays, and he's a great dad. And the incurable is gone. That lifelong sentence disappeared like a fog. And that's the story of restoration. That's how it all began. And we can do this. We can help our neighbors and the ones that we love and the stranger. Because everybody's looking for help out there. They really are. Let me tell you where this thing has gone. It's an amazing experience. It's been proven in science, big time. We've had to do that because I realized that there was going to be mega resistance to this. You're coming up against huge, huge forces in play here. I'm not going to talk to you about conspiracy because there is no conspiracy. It's real. It's been proven in court. That was a blessing. And been proven in practice. And Q Sciences, we are literally redefining what mood disorders. You notice it's not called mental illness. Those are dungeon terms. These are mood disorders, and they're caused by nutrient insufficiency. That's all. And I'm going to give you the evidence on that. Everything that I tell you today, I'll back up and I'll give it all to you. You can take it, and you can run hard with it, and you can help everybody. Well, why does it work? I've had so many people, I have to do this. I have to go through this with you because I've had so many doctors, non-professionals, or whoever who have said, get real. You're telling me that you're going to take on bipolar affective disorder, or schizophrenia, or ADHD, or autism with a vitamin mineral supplement? They've been selling those things off the shelves for 50 years. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Why? Why does this do this? Well, critical racial imbalance are absolutely... You know what? If we had missed by 5%, I'm telling you it wouldn't work. The formulation on that product, and I'm not here to sell that to you, but the formulation on that product, if we had missed it by 5%, it wouldn't work. Because we've done it over and over and over, and we've tried to modify it, we've tried to improve it. Whoa, 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 that's not working. Back up. Go back to the original. How did we get the original? I'll tell you. It wasn't because of the science books. Yeah, we studied. We gathered as much information. And I don't believe it was by luck. More active ingredients. There's 36 different nutrients in that. The chelation complex is where it's at. And we've all heard about chelation. This is not what we think it is. You see those two plants? They have the same birthday. I would rather have that one grown in my garden than that one. But how does that happen? It's what you do to cause uptake of nutrient into the plant. And the reason why my son now thinks clearly is because of what you do to cause uptake of the nutrient into the body. The exact same natural process. Make it look like God makes it and it works. Make it look like a man would build it and it doesn't. Do you see where I'm going? Look at that. Same birthday for those trees. Look at this. That's amazing. I'd rather have a plant with a root system like that, knowing that it's going to draw as much nutrition from the soil than that. This is how I want my brain to look. I want the neurons in my brain to be fully engaged and looking like this and not like that. This is what an Alzheimer's brain would look like. And I'm not being cheeky when I say that way. That's a major neuronal death process that sets in. And how does it set in? With minor symptoms. I can't remember that phone number. I had that phone number fixed in my mind for years. Starts off with MCI. We're doing research on that in Canada. Moderate cognitive impairment. That's the precursor to Alzheimer's. You want a healthy brain? Feed it. Feed it. And don't feed it with white toast either. That's okay. You can eat white toast. But you better back it up with something. No kidding. Micronization is a big issue with this. That's why it's bioavailable. And what's the proof? 20 medical journal publishings. Never happened before. Never happened before. Extreme bioavailability. Just like when you go in your backyard and you pluck a tomato or a peach off the tree or an apple off your tree, you know it's good. You know it's good. You're going to get 100% of that nutrition out of there or close to it. That's the key to it. Look at the research universities are involved. We didn't list them all. There's 15 now. Brown's University just came on. But things like Ohio State University, University of Canterbury, New Zealand, Harvard University, doing research. Are they being paid by us? Couldn't afford it. We could not afford it. That's the wonder of it. Look at all those journal publishings. And these are in qualified medical journals. Journals like the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, the largest medical psychiatric journal in the world, the most well-read. The Journal of Child and Adolescent Psychopharmacology, a number of studies in there. Huge. So this is bona fide research that's behind this. There's an estimated $25 million in research and we haven't paid 5 cents. All we did was supply product. Here's a case of product, you try it. Wow. There's 20 medical journal publishings. There's 5 more coming this year. There's already some in press. That means it's been accepted for publication. So you'll see another 5 by the end of the year. One of them is going to be a double-blind study, University of Canterbury, New Zealand. ADHD. And I don't get to look at the data because it's independent. They don't want it skewed. They don't want any influence from us at all on this. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that they don't want money. Because you don't want to buy your research. You want it to be true and you want it to be independent. But they're telling me that this study on ADHD is going to knock the socks off of us. It's going to be incredible. And we are now working with First Nations, the Blackfoot Confederacy out of Montana and Alberta, on FAS. There's a trial coming forth, being funded by Alberta Health Services in Canada. Wow. And a double-blind study coming on schizoaffective/schizophrenia with 100 subjects. Wonderful. It continues to come. It just keeps going because these researchers are driven because they want to absolutely prove that there's an answer for this. You see? I want to show you this one. While I don't like killing things, my wife will say, he's crazy. The guy will actually take a spider and put it in a cup and take it outside rather than crush it. It's just the way I am. But the Center for Neuroscience, Behavioral Neuroscience, here it is here, University of Lethbridge, Dr. Brian Kolb doing major stuff, won the worldwide recognition of the Killam Award. They're now having to rewrite the books on neuronal science because of this. What this is they took 3 to 4 day old rats, opened them up, and aspirated or sucked out the frontal lobe. This one had the frontal lobe sucked out. You can see the scar tissue. It grew back. Not just one. They divided them into 3 groups. Here's a group of normal rats, unlesioned. Here's a group of rats that were lesioned, and they fed them Purina rat chow. It sounds kind of funny, but it's real. Fortified with 22 vitamins and minerals. And then here is the rats with the Q96/EMPowerplus. And this is what they look like. Now, man, you got to think that that would just really damage the brain when you suck it out like that, even if it grew back. These are what they call parietal lesions. There's no escape from that. Yeah, there is. See the scar tissue? Wow, but how did these rats get affected? Well, let me tell you. They use what's called the Morris water tank test. It's a big, big tank, and they throw a milky agent in there to make the water so you can't see through it. It's milky colored. And they set up a little pedestal at a certain position in the tank, and it's about that far below the surface of the water. And then what they do is, around the tank on the walls, they put pictures, so that these rats use what they call spatial orientation. We do that every day. When you go home tonight, you're going to drive and you know where to turn because, well, I remember that stop sign. There's the light post in that brown house. We do the same thing. That's how we find our way. We orient ourselves by doing that. So do rats. They know how to go home too. But these rats had the frontal lobe sucked out. And here's what happened. How they measure the success of the rat, or the intelligence, this is one of the many tests, is through the distance in meters. Now these are unlesioned rats here, okay? That's an unlesioned rat that's unsupplemented, just on a standard diet of corn, peas, and beans and everything else, took that far to get to the pedestal, and repeatedly took that far after they learned the first time. They throw them back in the bath and they find their way there right away. You see? Just like we find our way. We don't have to drive around for 2 hours to get home, right? Well, here's the lesioned rats, okay? Untreated. Look how damaged they are. This is not good. That's about 50 rats compiled together. But look at the distance here of the lesioned rats that got better taking the supplemental diet. They're actually more intelligent than the unlesioned, unsupplemented rat. It made those rats more normal than normal. When I get home, I'm going to have a frontal lobotomy, and then I'm going to take Q96 and I'll be smarter. I'll find my way home faster. Wow. I mean, that's unfathomable. But that's the reality of taking nutrients that are bioavailable. We can repair our bodies. That's not Alzheimer's. That's the opposite. Now look at this. These are nutrited brain cells. These are actual slides. And these are untreated. Do you see how full those are compared to that? I'd rather have a root ball in my brain and the tree growing like this than this one. That looks like Charlie Brown's Christmas tree. That's what you want to do. So there's some evidence there. Very interesting. This is study number 18. University of Canterbury, shaken but unstirred. I'll go really quickly here. 7.2 earthquake leveled the city of Canterbury. Everybody's stressed out. I'd be stressed out. They lost their businesses, they lost their homes. Julia Routledge lived in her backyard. Good thing the weather was warm. No sewage system in that side of the town. They couldn't live in the house, it was too wrecked. Eventually they moved into the garage, camped out there for months. Wow, that's gotta create major stress. Well, they took 2 groups of people, unmedicated. This group here, we're just going to measure your symptoms on the Hamilton Depression Scale, Hamilton Anxiety, these different instruments that they use. And this side, we're going to give them Q96 EMPowerplus, and we're going to measure their symptoms. Well, what did it show after only 4 weeks? Look at the major drop in symptoms on 4 capsules. Incredible. Look at this one, Ohio State University Department of Psychiatry. Feasibility of a nutritional supplement as a treatment for pediatric bipolar. Wow. So these are children that are struggling like my kids did. Little guys. They're not doing well. Most of them don't attend school. Their lives are headed the wrong direction. Not their fault. What did they do? They did a 6-week-long study, average. 37% reduction in depression in these children, and a 45% reduction in mania. Never, ever, ever happened before on a medication. Doesn't happen. Nutrition works. This works. That is incredible. What happens, though, when you add another 4 weeks to the study? I mean, we're up here. How about it flatlines? It will. These are only short studies. This one here, major publishing in the British Medical Journal. Very hard to get in. This is an interesting study. It involved the Netherlands as well as Calgary, Alberta, the university, mood and anxiety disorders clinics. Here's a young boy, 11 years old, poor kid, hadn't attended school in years. He sees people that aren't there every day of his life. He's psychotic. He's also diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder and extreme anxiety. Boy, that's a hell in itself. It really is. Well, he spent 5.5 years in the medical system with no treatment success at all, and it was resolved all in 1 month with the Q96 formulation. What? I didn't say that. They did. Take a look at this, though. What they did is, the last 6 months of his illness, they followed him very tightly. What are the costs? What are the expenses? Well, he spent 75 days in a psych ward, and all of the ambulatory services, pathology, emergency visits, social working. The total cost was $158,000. This is normal for 6 months. So a year would be over $300,000 in cost. And then the next 6 months, they put him on the Q96 formulation, and the total cost was $2,800.49, of which $910.09 was for outpatient clinics to take him to the doctors. They just want to look at him. Are you okay? Yeah. Oh, good. He's doing better. And then they took him to outpatient support, and they checked him out. Now, how are you feeling? I'm doing good. Well, good. Okay. And then they gave him about $1,000 worth of the product. Okay, now, that doesn't compute, because $158,000 for 6 months worth of treatment in the medical system doesn't equal $2,800, of which the greater majority of that is outpatient servicing. What? What would that do for our society? You know, it's like a big black hole. A lot of insurance companies don't even want to touch mood disorders. In Canada, we have a social medical system. What's the #1 cost to the system up there? Mood disorders. And it's bankrupting us. It's literally bankrupting. They're saying all children, born after 1988 in the province of Alberta, their taxes will double over the next 10 years just to support me, the baby boomers. Because when the baby boomers come online, it's going to crash the system. And mood disorders are the #1 cost. It will save literally trillions of dollars globally to do nutrition instead of these drugs that don't work. You know, we ended up going to court. That was designed, no question. Cost us $381,000 to get through this mess. They cut the product off at the U.S. border. People started to suicide. What? You mean to tell me that a government agency would actually inflict injury upon its citizens? I don't want to sound like a crank here, but that's actually what happened. They cut the product off. Our largest mental health support system, called Canadian Mental Health Association, stood up publicly and said, Health Canada is causing the suicide and death and injury to Canadian people, and they're refusing to listen. And they blockaded this thing. They locked it down tight. They wanted this thing dead. They wanted to kill this thing. Well, there was a hero that came forward. This man here is a great humanitarian, a really good man. Dr. James Lunny, Member of Parliament. That'd be like a congressman in your country. He was the past chairman of the Federal Standing Committee on Health, and he took it into the House of Commons, like your Congress. Is that what they call it? Yeah. The Congress, yeah. And he got a standing ovation because he took on the bureaucracy and he chastised them publicly. Eventually, we were called and subpoenaed to come and stand before the Standing Committee on Health to bear witness against the bureaucracy. And on behalf of all Canadians, the whole committee stood and rose and apologized to the Canadian people for what had happened. But Health Canada, in a statement afterwards, said, we don't have to listen to them. Yeah. This is what we're dealing with. So let's hear from the good gentleman.
A mineral supplement developed in Alberta, EMPowerplus, has been helping Canadians with a mental illness known as bipolar disease, manic depressive. Tremendous cost to the individuals, a high risk of suicide.
It felt like I was somewhere standing watching myself while I was here just bursting and like a volcano, all mad.
This has brought me to recognize a new me, and has allowed me to become, you know, a new person.
Province of Alberta, when they heard about the effect that EMPowerplus was having on Albertans, they said, why don't we look into this? There's huge costs associated with it. And Mr. Speaker, they set up a $544,000 study.
The decrease in their symptoms is of a magnitude that is very impressive. Any medication that ever had this effect would catch a lot of people's attention.
Health Canada hears about this and moves in to shut down the study.
Shame.
Mr. Speaker, I mean, is there no room for science to progress the treatment of disease?
I know that for a decade before this supplement, I made over a dozen suicide attempts, and I really am lucky to be standing before you today.
They sent the police in to raid this little company in Raymond, Alberta, and raid their computers, and has done everything to obstruct delivery of a product.
I put in a phone call to Health Canada, where I was immediately flipped over to a mental health crisis line, where they have a script that says that you are mentally ill, you need to be under the care of your physician. Please go to the hospital. If you run out of your supplement, you will not have this dangerous drug anymore. We're looking out for your best interest.
An informed consumer is a far better judge of their healthcare needs than any Health Canada bureaucrat in Ottawa.
I just ask that you please let me keep my quality of life. Let me continue as a productive member of society.
Now there's over 3,000 Canadians receiving help from this product, and yet Health Canada would move to take it off the market, Mr. Speaker.
I love this country and I'm proud of my government, but right now I'm really scared at what they're doing.
Is there no room for science to progress the treatment of disease?
Went to Parliament and protested. So we wear these red umbrellas. And the young lady that I put the laser on, that's my daughter Autumn, who wrote the book. And so when you read the book, you'll read about those valiant young women and what they did there. Wow, quite the story. They hosted that press conference right within the House of Commons. And all of the major news carriers were there, and they were saying, what injustice! All of these cameramen, how did this happen in this wonderful nation? There was only one carrier that carried the story. This is how it went. Tonight's Global National News is brought to you by Pfizer, making lives better. Then they portrayed them as a bunch of lunatics on the hill. And they showed some people that had had thalidomide damage and said, this product may be like unto that. Tonight's news is brought to you by Bayer. I'm not kidding you, they sold it. Now that's in a day past. It now has acceptance. But that just tells you what happens out there. How the interests are big. They really are. And that's a good number of years ago. And things have changed. Interesting. Well, we ended up in court. It was supposed to be a 2-day-long court case, slam shut, summary conviction. These guys are guilty. The judge even expressed that. when our lawyers stood forth and said, you're going to require a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. No, I'm not allowing this to last for 2 to 3 weeks. And it was a very interesting experience as the judge started to get it. He started to get it. And eventually he did get it, and he slammed them a big one. He basically punted the charges, and then on a 30-page judgment that came out 5 months later, he said things like this. Thousands of individuals, not a few, thousands of individuals, because the evidence was before the court, huge, who have found relief from mental illness through the supplement without the negative side effects of conventional medications were relying upon them, us, to continue to sell and distribute their product, now watch this, and to maintain the True Hope program. This is the program that we run to help people get off of the medications. And we do that in Canada, legally. And we train doctors on how to do it. It's now become an accepted practice in Canada. And he slapped us with a criminal code edict under Section 217. Here it is. We're going to portray it. I'm walking down the street. There's an older gentleman walking beside me. We're heading to the store. And he falls on the ground. And he says, my heart. And I get down, because I know CPR, and I start to work on him. And I yell at a young lady there, please, phone 911. Get the ambulance here. Let's keep this guy going. Do you know artificial respiration? Yeah. You come down here, please. And we're working away. And I look at my watch 10 minutes into it and say, sorry, man, I'm late for lunch. Bye. Hope you make it okay. That's a violation under Section 217 that says if you're doing something and the stopping of that doing is going to injure or cause someone to die, you can't do it. It's like a Good Samaritan Act. What a blessing to have a wonderful act like that. We shouldn't need it, though, because we're supposed to be good people. But we still have that type of act. So he said, this applies now to you guys. You're not stopping. I don't care if the regulator says to you to shut down and go home. You're not shutting down, you're going home, because people rely upon your services to save their lives. And I declare that Health Canada was wrong. And further to that, I'm going to say this in my summary judgment. Health Canada knew that their actions would lead to injury. Now that's pretty bad. He slammed them so far, he blew them right into the next Sunday. I love this man. This is a man of honor. He's a man of courage. And so what happened? We got a license to operate. There we go. That's a major victory in progressive healthcare. I was visiting with Dr. Scott Salyer, the head of Health Canada, Director General. Mr. Salyer, thank you for hearing me out here. And who are you, sir? We're at a wine and cheese party. I'm Anthony Stephan from True Hope. Okay, what can I do for you? I said, we have so much evidence now, we want to make the claim. What claim? Well, that this is therapeutic and that it treats all mood disorders. So we're going to be making an application, and I know that you gave us the claim already that this product supports mental and physical well-being. That's the actual legal claim in Canada, and there's never been a claim like that before. And he said, well, that's absolutely true. It's a wonder that you have that claim. I said, well, it's well supported. He said, I realize that. I know all about you guys. And I said, so we're going to make an application. He said, it was never the intent that a low-level nutrient should treat high-level disorders. And I said, whose intent? Whose intent? Well, I'm not going to talk about that. And I said, okay, is there a law written that says that you can't treat with nutrients? Is that someplace? Or is it just an agenda? He said, I'm not going there. I'm just going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you that I read all the affidavits at trial. I've looked into you people. I hired 2 of the top Canadian psychiatrists to look into what you're doing. And your product does what you say it does. Go away. Well, it's an interesting thing. And what we've done is we've basically locked this thing down for the Q in Canada. No question. It's changing people's lives, and what a wonderful gift that is. It really is. Hundreds of media articles worldwide. Here's one that they hosted because we have a call center in Norway. And so they talked about that. Here's the Canadian Mental Health Association extolling the virtues of this program. I want to tell you about this one. This was an interesting phone call. We're almost done. Hello? Is that you, Mr. Stefan? Yes, it is. Mr. Stefan, my name is so-and-so, and I'm an investigative reporter with Washington, D.C., Fox 5 News. You're being investigated, sir. Oh, okay. Do you want me to send you some information? No. We won't be talking to you again. We're going to investigate you. Just watch for it to come out. Whoa, howdy! What's that going to look like? I'll show you.
Nearly 1 in 5 American adults have some sort of mental health issue, some of them minor, some of them severe. Each year, they spend thousands of dollars on medications. But what if you could replace all those medications with just one pill?
What's in these pills is well beyond what you'd find in an ordinary multivitamin. A doctor at Harvard found EMPowerplus helped 19 out of 22 patients with bipolar disorder, and a research team at the University of Calgary also found the supplement has, quote, a beneficial psychotropic effect.
We decided to try it, and it worked. I have seen people feel better than they have in many years, and that's very rewarding. That's what I'm in this work for.
A new study shows high doses of a dietary supplement improved symptoms in the majority of patients.
The patients in this sample got much better, in fact, more than 50% better. Quite a few of them were more than 75% better.
My thoughts are more clear. I don't, it's not all raced and all that, and I feel normal.
I tell you straight from my heart, it gave its life back.
What we're doing here is we're not applying a medication. All we're doing is we're applying proper nutrition, a very whole source of nutrition, and allowing the body to do what it does best, that of synthesizing and producing the various neurotransmitters that give us a proper neurochemical balance.
One of the interesting things that will eventually come out of the EMPowerplus research is that I think we might end up redefining how we think of mental illness. And that will be a huge change.
It's their work over the last 10 years that is why we're here today. And I believe that their work is already historically pivotal in changing the way that psychiatry will be practiced. Make no mistake, this is a historically significant piece of work that's being done.
Boy, howdy! We've arrived at the station now. Now we're there because remember Global that ran the thalidomide story? They're extolling the virtues. And they want us to advertise with them too. Isn't that funny, eh? And Dr. Kaplan, what a courageous person. I love her. Strong person, because they went after her too at the University of Calgary. They went after all the researchers involved, attacked them. There was a guy hired to go at these people. No question. They'll do anything just to keep the bottom line. But that's not what it's about. It's not about the bottom line. It's about helping our neighbors and our loved ones and the stranger that's struggling on a daily basis. It's not about the money. It's about working with people. And that's the part that thrills me, to see good people like you here that are going to go out there and help those people. And you're going to spread the word, and you're going to show compassion and mercy and kindness and all those good virtues by doing that. And they're going to love you with all their hearts. You're going to become the best friend of somebody. They'll hug you, they'll pray for you, they'll carry you because you're going to help them. And I mean that sincerely. I absolutely mean that. You're going to experience the wonder of this. This isn't about Tony Stefan. This is about a change, a huge paradigm that's coming. There isn't any program or product out there that has this much research on it. According to those researchers, this is the most studied nutritional supplement in the world, and it's yours now. I'm giving it to you to run with it, literally. You know that in your good country, there's 68 million people they estimate that need this? that are tearing their lives apart, tearing their families apart, breaking up. I've seen people come back together. I'm getting remarried again next week. Wow, good for you. Because they're no longer suffering with this terrible, terrible life sentence that tore their family apart. Wow, it's huge. And the paradigm shift, listen to this. You'll be shocked. The pharmaceutical industry is slinking off of the battlefield and leaving the wounded. Listen to what's happening. Here, you'll be interested. This is national news.
If you or someone you love has suffered from the debilitating effects of mental illness, then you know how difficult it can be to find the right medication. But now there's another frustration. As awareness of mental illness grows, the development of new medications is shrinking. Our health reporter, Kelly Crow, has that story.
Mandy Louise Buckner was diagnosed with depression 10 years ago. Did antidepressants work for her?
I was a walking zombie. I was scared. I was, for the first time in my life, I didn't know how to relate to people. I didn't know how to put one foot in front of the other.
It's a common story. For most people suffering from depression, the existing drugs don't work, even though there are 30 different drugs on the market, including famous blockbusters like Prozac, that have generated billions of drug company dollars.
They've created a whole series of compounds that are now off patent, and so there no longer is the profit margin for them to continue to focus in this area.
But instead of working on the next generation of medication for mental illness, drug companies are now walking away.
Over about the last 2 years, you've seen most of the major companies say that this is an area that they're going to shift away from.
We are in dire need of more medications. We're at the bottom, so we're the orphan of the orphans in terms of research, and of course that's impairing the development of new treatment strategies.
The brain is complicated. Mental illness is not like physical disease where there's damaged tissue to study. And that's one reason why drug companies are moving their money into cancer and other diseases where the biology is better understood.
They want to shift their investments to areas of lower risk.
Today, Mandy says she's recovered, but not because of the drugs.
I feel fantastic. For me, it was getting off the medication.
With mental illness taking a bigger toll on people's lives than cancer and infectious disease, it's agreed there's a critical unmet need for better treatment. Kelly Crow, CBC News, Toronto.
Did you hear what she said? There's a critical unmet need for better development? I got a great idea. Why don't we do this? We'll try that for a while. Absolutely. That's what's happening. That's what's happening out there. I never thought I'd hear the national news do that. Look at this one. This is a shocker.
Well, for the millions of patients struggling with depression, putting their faith in medications to feel better, this won't come as happy news. Today, British researchers said several popular antidepressants are essentially no better than a placebo. Our health reporter, Maureen Taylor, is here to explain. Maureen, tell us more about this study.
Well, Peter, this was a review of all of the clinical trials on 4 antidepressants, and their names will be familiar to many Canadians. They are Prozac, Effexor, Paxil, and Cerazone. Now, Cerazone was withdrawn from the market because of liver toxicity a few years ago, but the other 3 remain wildly popular. Last year, Canadian doctors wrote 20 million prescriptions for these and similar medications known as SSRIs to the tune of about $1 billion. But you know, Peter, when researchers actually analyzed all of this data, they found that these medications were no better than a dummy pill or a placebo.
All right. So why were these drugs approved if they're not effective?
You know, that's a good question because we don't always get the reasoning from the FDA or Health Canada when they approve or don't approve a drug.
All right, Maureen, thanks very much. Health reporter Maureen Taylor.
I can't believe that. 20 million prescriptions. Let's try 20 million bottles of Q96. Yes. I wonder what that would do. And in your country, if you were to stretch that out, because you've got the population, that would represent 200 million bottles that would work, and it wouldn't be $10 billion either. That's amazing when you think of it. That's only 3 medications out of about 300. You see how big this thing is? But it's going away. It's like a fog. People are waking up. And the younger generation, not my generation as much, we're starting to get it, but we were really kind of tied into that. But the younger generation are label readers, and they're looking and they're asking questions. And that's where we need to go. This is only one of many modalities that are going to come among us. I'm going to say this. I think in the next 5 years, we're going to see a major, major shift in how we treat our bodies. And we're going to see a major increase in longevity and health and happiness because of that. When this is working right, happiness is instilled as well. You see? That's what it's about. What we've done is, we look at it. If we're not moving ahead, we're falling behind. When we first started out, people took 48 capsules a day. Now, how do you want that? Lunch or supper with gravy and ketchup or without? I'm not kidding you. And people had flatulence. It was terrible. But it still worked. It still, to them, was just a wonderful godsend. And I say that with reverence. And then we got down to 32 capsules, and they couldn't believe it. We've arrived. No, we haven't. Because we got down to 18 per day. And then we got down to 15. And now we've made it more bioavailable through the conversion process. We call it the Apex Biosynthesis Conversion Technology. We're now converting those minerals in such a way that the uptake is incredible. It's not about how much you take, it's about how much you get. That's the difference. We're doing better than at 48 with 4. And it's rapid and it's fast. And we've made it so that it helps to clear the liver of the medications and all of the contaminants. Wow. Like, we see people in 2-3 days. I got an email the other day. Well, I could read it off, I think, but I won't. An older gentleman in Cardston, very skeptical. And he came up to one of the meetings there that one of the guys up in Cardston was hosting, and he said, all right, I'll try this out. Q96 stuff. So he took 2 of these. He's got a 36-year-old boy. And he's called, I can't pronounce it, Agenesis corpus callosum. It's where the white matter that connects this hemisphere to this one is not there. It's become fibrous. He was born this way. It's a congenital birth defect. And so he's always had a problem. He can barely speak. He can't take and compute and make this match it. So he has to write things out. That's how he messages. Well, so his father gives him this stuff. He lives in Cardston as well. He said, just try it out. I don't think it's going to do anything. And the kid phones him up. The kid phones him up 4 days later. And he's talking like 85% better. I don't know how that works. But we're hearing stories like that constantly. And you're going to experience that. That sounds like snake oil coming down the tube. But you're going to see that for yourself as you help people change their lives. Because this is a real gift. It really is. And so anyhow. Oh, better not do that one. I should have taken that out. Barbara, you should have helped me on that one. You're not supposed to read that one. You can't combine those two like that without having some situation. Stupid, eh? No, we're going to go to the right side. Why don't we do it this way? If you come across somebody who's medicated, just send them up to micronutrientsupport.com and we'll help them. We'll look after that side. We don't want you having to worry about that. Micronutrientsupport.com will help them with their medications and work with their doctors and do it really, really well. I want to read to you from the transcript of the trial. Dr. Charles Popper, who's a huge psychopharmacologist, he trains psychiatrists at Harvard University, was subpoenaed to come to Canada. And so he had to speak openly, in the trial. And so Sean Buckley, the constitutional lawyer that handled our case, got him in the witness box. And Dr. Popper had some major life-changing experiences and took his whole, and he was so against this. When we gave him a bottle of EMPowerplus, he hid it behind all of his books. He was afraid to see that in the office. And one of his cohorts came in, a guy named Bass, and he has a boy that was right out of control, and they didn't want to put him on medications because this cohort was a psychiatrist, and he'd seen the negative effects. I don't want to medicate my boy, Charlie, what am I going to do? I don't know, but you got to do something because he's raging all over the place, and he's breaking things and kicking holes in the walls. He's driving my wife over the edge, what am I going to do? And Charlie had just attended this meeting with Dr. Kaplan and ourselves at McLean Hospital, Boston and Harvard, and he said, I don't know. You know what? I just visited with these loons, and they have this bottle of this snake oil stuff, and they're saying that it's helping people. Here, I'm just going to give it to you. Put your kid on, whatever. But if you don't want to medicate him, don't medicate him. You just have to find something that's going to work. So they run out of the bottle. He didn't hear from this guy. And they run out of the bottle, and he phones Charlie up, and Charles Popper, and he said, quick, I got to get another bottle. And so he was able to get him another one. But that was his first experience. Anyhow, he ended up taking his whole practice and putting it on EMPowerplus. And so now he's subpoenaed, he's in court. Buckley, this is the lawyer, speaking to Charles Popper. Now, when you're talking about transitioning somebody off meds, and we've discussed that you actually consider the True Hope people to be, would it be fair to say you consider them to be the experts in that field? Dr. Popper. They are the experts, yes. Okay, you use the word the experts. Why do you say that? Well, there are very few people who are really knowing the ins and outs of the treatments, and certainly their experience is vastly larger than mine. I'm not boasting when I talk about that. We put over 80,000 people, and we learned about the medications and their effects. So we've set up this system up there where people come to us and we help them with their medications. So just send them there. We'll help, okay? Very simple. You don't have to worry about that. Why Q96? 20 medical journal publishings, 5 more to come, and 2 more that are coming in the opting. Approximately 25 million in research, 15 universities researching, less than 10% of the orthodox treatment cost. Court endorsed, over 80,000 in North America, and it's actually a lot more than that now. It's used in over 100 countries. We have the NPN and the site license from Health Canada. That makes this all legal in Canada, and it's okay down here, no problem. Micronutrient support to help people. Get in there and do it. It's just amazing what you're going to do. Just take it and feel better. And that's what it's about. It's about restoration. And you're gifted because now you can help your neighbors to have that same restoration. Thanks for being with us today. You're a wonderful audience.